Welcome to the Heal with Jill podcast. I'm your host, Jill Yeiter. Each week, I share one short, digestible episode to help you create clarity and ease in your wellness story. I'll be exploring self-care, intuition, mindfulness, intentional living, and more. If you enjoy a fresh perspective, agree that life is not black and white, and want to improve your relationship with yourself, then you're in the right place. Thanks for joining me today for episode 7 on the Heal with Jill podcast. Today, we will be having a chat about physical environments and how to create physical environments for more enjoyment and also so that you can focus when that is what's required. So let's go ahead and get started. First, I just want to say that there's a number of environments that you can apply, the concepts to that we're going to be discussing. They are kind of universal. You can generalize the information and apply it anywhere that fits. So obviously your home environment is a major one for creating a flowing, clutter-free space. Your work environment would be another one, and you may or may not have a large amount of control over that depending on where you work. But you certainly will have some control. Even your transportation is another environment if that's a vehicle that you operate. And your larger environment would be your your community, and that again, you can decide how significant that is to you and how you would like to impact that if you care to do so on that level. And then even just like the natural environment that you live in is something that you're affected by. You may not have control over that, but it's just good to note. And the same process that we're going to talk about doesn't necessarily apply there, but it's just good to recognize that the natural environment that you live in has an impact on your overall well-being. And then another area that we sometimes forget about that's a major component in most of our lives is our virtual environment. So I actually really prefer, just so you understand my perspective, I prefer existing in a clean, clutter-free environment. And it's not to superimpose that preference on everyone if that's not the case for you. But I think that it is for most people, but they're just, maybe having a bit of a challenge to get to that place. So the reason that I prefer that kind of environment is because I'm just better able to focus. I'm pretty visually sensitive. And so I enjoy having an environment that I've created in a way that I find satisfying. And something about my personality is that I have always just loved a fresh start. Like I love a new journal or a freshly vacuumed floor or just silly things in life that make us excited, but just a blank piece of white paper is really exciting to me. So it sets the tone for just like a new, fresh experience, like kind of a redo, a start over, however you want to interpret that. And then I also believe that we're not separate from our environment. And so our environment is kind of a reflection of what's going on in our inner world to some extent. And so the clutter around us is like a visual representation of, I believe, our ability to make decisions and to allocate time and to create systems that work for us, and then to follow through with those decisions and systems that we've created. So my objective is to help you create and influence your environment in ways that allow you to feel safe and free from distraction when it's time to focus, and to just simply enjoy your physical environment. Like you just really feel good and cozy and happy there and want to be there. And this begins with making decisions and owning what suits you and what doesn't. And it's also about sending a message to yourself that boundaries are good and that we don't need to do everything, we don't need to like everything, and we don't need to keep everything. And we certainly get to choose to a very large extent what we bring into our homes, particularly, and our virtual spaces, and what, just generally speaking, what we interface with in life. So let's just kind of start now talking through this process of kind of decluttering. I'm going to apply it to our home space, and then you can, of course, take the same idea and apply it in other areas where it's well suited. So begin with just kind of assessing where the bulk of clutter is. So that's step one, is to do an assessment. Is it papers? Is it clothing? Maybe it's books or kitchen items or toiletries or kid stuff or something else that I'm not listing, but you can assess in your own home where that clutter is. And then the next step is to decide. So by that, I mean decide how much variety versus minimalism you prefer in this area. So everyone is really different. You can still be clutter free, even if you're not a so-called minimalist. So um, in some areas of my life, I am very much minimalistic, and in other areas, I actually like a variety. I actually have kind of a lot of clothing, and I kind of like that, and I rotate them, and I keep it fresh, and I have a system, so not all of it is out in my immediate closet, which is quite small, but I have a system in place that involves these storage containers that I really like. I enjoy, again, interfacing with that tangible object, that item, and they fit under my bed nicely, but they don't create clutter or visual clutter in the environment. And so I use that as backup, and then I kind of rotate items in a way to keep things fresh. And I first try to shop from my own wardrobe before ultimately making a decision if I'd like to add something new in. And then if I do add something new in, I also let something go. So you can decide. Sometimes it creates panic because there's an assumption that to be um, clutter free means that you're also a minimalist. And that I don't actually believe is necessarily the case. What I do believe is important is owning the reality of the space that you have to work with, the physical space that you have to work with, and respecting that parameter. So, something that I find satisfying in life is kind of, it's fun when you have a boundary because you get to figure out all the many creative ways to make something work and to feel satisfying within that parameter. It kind of creates a creative problem solving perspective on it. So, the next step would be to kind of brainstorm a system that has flow for you. So I mentioned my system regarding clothing, for example. So a few other ideas that I personally implement as part of my decluttering system is that I have a bin in our linen closet that is literally just like a donation bin. So it's ongoing. The moment something is no longer needed, doesn't fit, isn't the right thing, there's no kind of having it hang around in the space, taking up space and energy, if you're into that kind of side of things as well. So if you have just like a constant ability to declutter as you go after doing a major decluttering, it's so much easier. I rarely have to do a large decluttering because it's just part of the flow to declutter. It's kind of just like doing laundry or doing the dishes. And then another thing that I really try to do is only bring things into my home that I truly love. And if that even applies, if someone gives you something and you don't really love it, you're not obligated to keep it. Maybe you decide a creative way to kind of honor it if you even care about it for a short time, but you're not obligated to keep it forever. So those are just a few ideas about creating some flow in your space. And then just keep experimenting and adjusting it. You might find that you need to work with it for quite a while to tweak it and get it to feel um, like it's really kind of, like you have a strong sense of ownership over a system that works for you and that isn't too rigid or too flexible. And so then, of course, you can apply this same concept in other areas of your life. So an example would be your virtual space. So if you applied that kind of step one of assessment there, you would start by assessing where the bulk of the clutter is. Maybe it's in your email files, maybe it's photos, maybe it's bookmarks, maybe it's apps on your phone or your computer. And so then decide how much minimalism versus variety you value. And so what I will say is if you value a lot of variety, then you do need to be more savvy about the systems that you put in place so that you can still have flow in your life and not get bogged down. So if you brainstorm a list of systems that would support flow in your virtual reality, would maybe be like moving everything to an external hard drive that you're not directly interfacing with, so that when you open your files, you don't get distracted and are not bombarded with all of this stuff that's not relevant. And then just creating clearly labeled folders that are nested within families of relevant content on your virtual in your on your devices, excuse me. So, and then again, just experiment and adjust the plan, tweak it, make it work for you. And then once you've done an initial kind of decluttering. So obviously, I didn't speak in great depth about if you're really bogged down and you need to do like a massive clear out overhaul. But yeah, the reality is that it would need to start there if you are in that state. But once you've done that, then it's much easier to keep the systems that you implement running smoothly. And then you'll just find that over time, your mental load is so decreased in this area of your life. And so things just start to feel like they're running really smoothly, and you have energy, like physical and mental and emotional energy, freed up to focus on other things that you enjoy and to actually enjoy like physical items in your home that you enjoy interfacing with again. So hopefully this was helpful. I am absolutely an advocate for not having clutter. So I look forward to chatting with you again really soon on the next episode. So take care and bye for now. Thanks for joining me this week on the Heal with Jill podcast. You can find all my free resources, including menu planners, mindful movement videos, and more, as well as my coaching and courses at healwithjill.com. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you'd share it with a friend and give it a rating. Take care and bye for now.